Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Sturgeon, and I am in English 6381 Disability Studies course with Dr. Garrison. And I am doing my final presentation over my final research paper. And a little bit about me before. This is my first semester in the graduate program. I'm having a lot of fun with the coursework. My undergraduate degree is in business administration and accounting. So we seem to have a lot more fun over here, but it is a lot different than my undergraduate coursework. So I don't remember doing a lot of presentations in business school, but that was pre-COVID, so I could have. It just seems like a lifetime ago. Anyway, so I did my research project over uh, uh, the experience of having access to a disability studies course and what that can mean for people who feel like they don't have a lot of experience um, with disability or impairment or what that kind of means. It was really eye-opening to me to realize how uh, disability is not a state of someone else I don't know. It's a state of, you know, an eventuality for my body and everyone's body. And it affects a lot of people that I know and I love. Um, and a lot of people just in my community and our society as a whole. And so having access to this coursework um, was really eye-opening to me. And so I did my research through a lot of different scholar articles, a lot on disability and culture. I read one about disability involved with a group of teenagers, disability, disease, and gifts, a field study report on disabled teenagers. Um, I did one on, or I read one on online dating and disability, dating websites and disability identity, um, and some on disability and poverty, and some on, one of them was on disabled and non-disabled actors working in partnerships for performances. So there was a lot of good stuff out there. And that was just a little bit of it. But like I said, I started my paper kind of at the beginning for me, which was kind of not knowing what to expect when I started and signed up for this course. I kind of had thought that it was going to be kind of a literary analysis on like um, disabled characters, Southern Gothic kind of things, just the use of like the literary devices. And I obviously realized pretty quickly that that was inaccurate. One of the things that was very kind of jarring to me was when I had kind of thought in my own life what disability looked like at the very beginning of the course. And, I had kind of reflected on my when my father at the end of his life required the use of a wheelchair to make, like kind of travel, and he was a teacher, his work as a teacher accessible for him. And I thought, okay, well, I have that experience, with him and what that looked like. And then I was having a conversation with my 10-year-old, and this is so profound to me. I said, "Do you know anybody with disabilities?" And I was kind of thinking about his classmates, maybe he just had some kind of insight. Sometimes he'll say things that are very wise. And he said, "Yeah, sure, I do. I've got dyslexia, dysgraphia, and Connor, my older son, he's got ADHD and dysgraphia." And I was like, oh, yes, of course. And then he's like, yeah, and Aunt Hannah has autism, and Hannah is my sister. And so that was kind of, just a really like profound moment for me. Like, you know, disability is just a state of being. I mean, depending on where you are, um, not to say that there is an impairment in like self-identification of the spectrum of disability, but to realize how all around me I didn't realize it was. And another part of that story is when I was writing my first blog post, I did not realize how uncomfortable I was with, uh, discussing our reading for the week, because I felt like, and I felt for two reasons. For one, I felt like I was an outsider writing about something I didn't know anything about. And two, I feared that, my ignorance on the subject matter would be mistaken um, as, insensitive. And that was really surprising for me to kind of work through that. And it was really something I had to get through um, to be able to do the coursework in this class, to really put myself out there, to be able to understand what I needed to, Oh, one of the first experienced moments on one of the most interesting parts of the coursework for me was to realize that disability is so contextual. And again, I don't know if it's because of where I am in the program, or this is just specific to me, but I kind of related it back to my older son, and how he is disabled in a classroom, but he is not disabled on a football field. Whereas, in some instances, if I were doing the same thing, if I was put in a football field, on a football field, there'd be things that would make me disabled, but not necessarily in a classroom. Um, and, I did some research in that. I'm pretty passionate about inclusion. I know that some people are very big on inclusion in the education system. I am not as big on inclusion in the education system, because I've seen firsthand what that means sometimes for children. My parents were both elementary teachers. My mother was a special education teacher in a self-contained classroom with, children who mostly children with autism, nonverbal and some higher functioning. But so I've seen a lot of it, and I've also worked as a teacher before as well. But I did some research into how the classroom is so disabling. And I know from my own experience, when my sons, since they both have learning disabilities, have ARDS every year, and they always are pushing for students to be put back into the classroom with their peers, their normal peers, their peers that are functioning and learning at a correct pace, And for my sons, for my younger son especially, that has been disabling for him. He's got dyslexia. It was discovered late. He's fifth grade. He can't read. He can't read on the level of some of the other kids in his class. And it's disabling for him to be in that classroom. However, when he's in a small group classroom, he can read. He can take his time. The pressures and the expectations are a little bit different. So I kind of went through some of that, and how, meeting the standards of education and the concept for disability being contextual is kind of where the value of this disability studies grew from for me. Let's see. And then I kind of went on into another study of, so I kind of went through the education system, self-identification, and then media-based portrayals of people with disabilities. So in my self-identification, I did some study about the online dating aspect. This one was more based on autism, and I did some kind of a Q&A with someone. And then I also just did the research into kind of what it means for people who are disabled, how they portray themselves depending on the situation, what that looks like, the negative stereotypes that sometimes they have to feel like they need to overcome in social situations, or even presenting themselves online in a meeting people like a social situation. A little more about kind of the ADA standards and how going beyond compliance can really bridge gaps in certain aspects, and kind of like creating that equality within a scholarly community. And then last, I also went into kind of like the same situation of how disability sometimes can be connected with poverty due to the gap between some of the understanding and the communication gap there. This one was specifically for someone who has autism. And like they said, like the effort is there, but sometimes that communication gap can mean a difference between having gainful employment and being at the poverty line, and kind of what that looks like. And then last but not least, I did the kind of what is some different portrayals of disabled people, impaired people, and then just movies that show that. I went over kind of the narrative prothesis, and how sometimes when people are writing TV series or movies, that there's a reliance on disability to be kind of ever present in like a separating effect, like an anonymous background, kind of just, someone to kind of just develop a plot very, very simply with. And then I kind of picked a few examples to kind of go over. The first one I did was Lucky Hank, which is an AMC series with an actress named Shannon DeVito, and she plays an English professor who she has spinal muscular atrophy. Excuse me. And I really liked in the series how that was not part of her storyline. It was her character. That's how she experiences life, but it was very well done in that it was not about her disability and using that as a tool for like a story plot. It was just part of her life, and it was nice to see that representation in that way. The next one is Coda, which was the 2021 Academy Award winner for Best Picture, and the Best Supporting Actor. They had three of the four main actors were deaf, hard of hearing individuals. One of them being Marlee Matlin, who of course won for Children of a Lesser God in 1986 for Best Actress, and kind of touched on how the deaf community kind of responded to it. The story, of course, is about a teenage girl who discovers her passion for singing. And of course, her mother, her father, and her brother are all deaf. She's the only hearing individual in her household. And so the deaf community kind of liked the way that it showed self-sufficient adults, loving parents, sexual beings, and but then they also kind of were not as big of a fan of the way that the story is kind of a stereotypical, they can't appreciate music the way she can, and they didn't find that to be always accurate and true. And then the last one I did was Mozart and the Whale, which is a Josh Hartnett and a film where he plays in a character with autism, and how that was loosely based on two real people who were it was a husband and wife who were author and advocates for autism awareness, and kind of how that representation came from people who, it wasn't just written, it was by just anyone. It came from people who really experienced life like that and were able to tell their story. So I really enjoyed that one as well. And so that's kind of everything. um it's been a great semester. It feels like it's gone by really fast. I really enjoyed it. I really learned a lot, and you'll have a good winter break.